people don't always love to talk sales and marketing because it's so technical. So I actually have a sales and marketing hat that I wear sometimes. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that?
I didn't, but it makes sense.
So in the open source space, it's the evil supervillain hat here. Because anytime I talk about sales and marketing, everyone in the ecosystem thinks like, ooh, icky. I don't like to hear that. But we're all about the open source business stuff here. So we wanted to dig into that. And since you brought it up, it is an apropos time to kind of dig in, because your experience in background is more on the sales marketing side, and open source is relatively new in the last few years to you, correct?
It is. That's correct.
Now, you have to admit, coming in from a classic open source or a non-open source space and coming into the open source space and trying to sell free is really weird, right? I mean, like, how was that experience for you? Like I know my first foray into open source was just that crazy kind of like, how does this work? And nothing works the way that it does in a classic business.
It's definitely an interesting one. And I think in some cases, right, growing these things when you're running into obstacles, it can be very draining, right? This idea that you're struggling to sell something that's free, right, is so frustrating, right? Where you're like, we're bringing value, we're giving it to you for free. There's no ask, and you still don't want to, when you have those moments, right, it can be very frustrating. The thing I would say is like a preamble to all of this too, because I do see this all the time, right? That people, otherwise very talented people, maybe people who would excel in sales and marketing, they feel this kind of dogma, or stigma to it. It feels a little gross or icky to them. And I'll tell you the truth, for me, for a long time, it felt the same way. I did my early career was in venture capital, then as a kind of technical co-founder building consumer electronics. My academic background is in cognitive science. I never necessarily thought that I would be doing like sales or marketing or being like a business guy, at least in that sense. And what I've really found exciting and motivating as someone doing kind of sales and marketing now in open source is to think of it so differently, right? I think the mistake people make is when they think of it as this transactional thing. And in that sense, it is gross, right? But instead, where we've really found a tremendous amount of acceleration, growth, and excitement is when we take the perspective as a team that instead we're problem solvers with a particular expertise, and we're consultants looking to enable people. And what I mean by that is, rather than approaching our users and saying like, hey, like we want to figure out how to one way or another monetize you, right? Instead, we're coming to the conversation first, ostensibly as sales conversations, right? But we're coming to the conversation saying, hey, we've been banging our head against this problem for 4 years and then some. We've seen every way it can be done wrong. We've also seen how it can be done right. And we want to help you avoid those headaches and get it right. That's where we kick off the relationship. And for me, it sounds so simple and so obvious, but I feel like we weren't doing it for a while. I feel like I see so many projects and businesses not doing it today. And that would be my kind of key advice to get around that blockade in both the personal level and a practical level. Like personally, now you're no longer this, cheesy suited used car salesman. You're a product-oriented person that's a problem solver. That's exciting. And then when you transition that into a kind of you operationalize that, you suddenly unlock the floodgates in terms of, your pipeline, your meetings, your schedule, because you're really kind of leading with value. And I think that's where open source can be so powerful, right? Is you're giving them value straight away. Then as you look to evolve that, your sales process is showing them how they can extract even more value from that, how they can avoid headaches, how they can get it right. And I think if you stay true to that, it's quite hard to make mistakes. Fingers crossed, I don't feel like
yeah.